He told me not to worry, what's mine is yours, baby. That was the last lie I believed from my husband. The house sat on the corner of Sycamore Lane with wraparound porches and white columns like something out of a southern novel. We weren't even looking to buy yet, just browsing, but the minute I stepped inside, I felt it. The air smelled like lemons and old wood. I remember thinking, this is the kind of place where life begins again. We were holding hands when we toured it, laughing about how the attic could be his man cave, and how the breakfast nook was made for my morning coffee rituals. The realtor smiled too much. I was too enchanted to wonder why she kept addressing everything to him. We found the perfect house, but I put my name on nothing. Not because I didn't want to, because he didn't let me. Oh, honey, he'd chuckle, pulling me against him. Your credit's messy. We'll clean it up next year. This is just a formality, a little paperwork. The house is ours, don't worry. So I didn't, at least not right away. I painted the walls, refinished the cabinets with my own hands, hung every picture frame, each one carefully angled so our smiles looked perfect. And they did for a while. My sister even said, "You're glowing, Lizzie." That glow, it wasn't love, it was delusion dressed in HGTV fantasy. The first sign should have been the locked drawer in his office, the one with all the papers, the one I never had a key to. But I didn't ask, because asking felt like accusing, and I was still clinging to the version of us that picked peaches at the farmer's market and said forever like we meant it. Then one night a knock came at the door, late, past midnight. It wasn't a neighbor, it wasn't a friend. It was her. And that was when the doorknob of my life stopped turning the way it used to. She looked too young to be his cousin. That was my first thought. The girl at the door had this half-wet hair clinging to her cheeks, mascara smudged just enough to say she'd been crying, or wanted me to think she had. She wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big, the kind girls borrow from boys after a night of something unspoken. "Is Grant home?" she asked, not even glancing at me. I hesitated. Her voice was soft but familiar, like something I'd overheard once on speakerphone, like a name I'd forgotten on purpose. Grant appeared behind me faster than I expected, shirtless, barefoot, and far too calm for someone answering the door at 12:17 a.m. "Savannah." His voice cracked, but not with shock. More like guilt. Before I could ask who she was, he pulled her in, literally pulled her into his chest. Her face went straight into his collarbone like it had been there before. He told me she was his cousin, said her dad was sick, said she had nowhere else to go, said she was only 19 and didn't have anyone. And I wanted to believe that. I needed to. Because the alternative, the way she stared at him when he wasn't looking, the way her hands lingered too long on the back of his chair at dinner, felt impossible. Too ugly to name. So I made up my own story. I was the good wife, the understanding one, the one who set up the guest room, even laid out towels. I even baked blueberry muffins the next morning like some desperate domestic goddess. And for 2 weeks she was quiet, sweet even. Thanked me every night for dinner, washed dishes without being asked, always wore long sleeves and kept her eyes low. But there was one thing she never did. She never called him cousin. Not once. And when I caught her trying on my lipstick in the upstairs bathroom mirror, she didn't flinch. Just smirked and said, "He likes this color, doesn't he?" That was the night I started locking my bedroom door. Only it wouldn't stay locked for long. Because Savannah wasn't the only secret in our house. And soon even the walls would start whispering things I wasn't ready to hear. It was raining the night I found her in our bed. Not the guest room, not the couch, our bed. I'd come home early from a visit with my sister. I wanted to surprise Grant. Maybe rekindle some of that old magic we hadn't touched in months. I had a bottle of Cabernet in one hand and a tote bag of fresh groceries in the other, rosemary chicken sourdough strawberries. The door creaked open, and I knew immediately something was off. There was music playing upstairs. Slow, moody Marvin Gaye kind of music. Bedroom music. I called out Grant, no answer. My feet felt heavy walking up those stairs. Like my body already knew what my heart wasn't ready to admit. The door to the master bedroom was cracked open, just enough for me to see her Savannah wrapped in my silk robe curled on my side of the bed, flipping through a book I'd left on the nightstand. She didn't flinch when I walked in. "Where's Grant?" I asked. She looked up, smiled. "In the shower," she said. "He'll be out soon." Like this was her room, her house, her man. I should have screamed. I should have thrown the wine bottle. I should have told her to get out and never come back. But I didn't. I just stood there staring at this girl, this child, lounging in my life like it belonged to her. "You're wearing my robe," I whispered. Savannah stretched, letting it fall open just enough to show bare thigh. "It's soft," she said. "He gave it to me after last night." That sentence broke me. It didn't even matter what last night meant. I could see it in her face. She was daring me to ask. I turned around and left. I don't remember walking back down the stairs. I don't remember what I did with the groceries. I think I sat in the car for hours while the rain soaked through the windows, listening to the soft click of water hitting the windshield like it was trying to knock me awake. When Grant came down later, he looked too clean, his hair still wet. No shame in his eyes. "I can explain," he said. But he didn't. He didn't explain a damn thing. Instead, he said, "You knew things weren't right between us. Don't act surprised." He was right. I did know. But that didn't make it hurt less. That didn't make her less of a betrayal. That didn't make the way she wore my perfume, cooked with my pans, used my toothbrush. Yes, my toothbrush, any easier to swallow. The next morning she was gone from the bed, but her earrings were still on the nightstand. And I knew this wasn't a one-time thing. This was something that had already begun long before I found them. I packed a bag the next morning. Not all of it, just enough to feel like I was doing something. I threw in a pair of jeans, 2 shirts, my old college hoodie, and the only photo of my mother that hadn't already been swallowed by Grant's curated walls. The house suddenly felt colder than usual, as if it could sense I was giving up. Grant didn't stop me. He just stood by the kitchen sink sipping coffee from my mug, the one with the chip on the rim that I loved because it felt lived in. "She's fragile," he said, as if he were talking about a child. "She's been through a lot. I didn't mean for it to happen." That sentence haunted me. I didn't mean for it to happen. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "It was a mistake." Just that cold, hollow phrase that people use when they don't want to take responsibility. I left the house that day, but I didn't leave. Not really. I drove around aimlessly, stayed 2 nights at my sister's, ate microwave lasagna, and pretended I was fine while she kept offering me herbal tea and silent looks that begged me to talk. But I couldn't. Because how do you explain that your husband cheated on you with someone who calls him by his first name and you by a fake smile? I came back on the 3rd morning. The same key still worked. There were 2 glasses in the sink, a long brown hair on my pillow, and a pink lighter on the nightstand. I don't smoke. Neither does Grant. And yet, I unpacked. I put my jeans back in the drawer, my toothbrush back in the cup beside hers. It wasn't defeat. It was something stranger, something quieter. I wanted to watch them. I started noticing the way Grant looked at her when he thought I wasn't watching. The subtle way he laughed too hard at her jokes. The shift in his posture when she walked into the room. He became younger, almost bashful, like a boy performing for attention. And she acted like I was the guest. Smiled sweetly, always offered me coffee, like she didn't just sleep with my husband. Always said thank you in that syrupy tone that made me want to scream. I began collecting moments. Tuesday night she wore one of my old dresses. He didn't say a word. Thursday morning I found her reading his emails at the kitchen table. She didn't even hide the screen. Saturday afternoon I watched her rub his shoulders while he watched the game. Each moment chipped away at something inside me, but it didn't break me. Not yet, 'cause I wasn't ready to leave my house. And even though my name wasn't on the deed, I had spent hours sanding those kitchen cabinets. I planted the hydrangeas out front with my bare hands. That fireplace mantle was mine. I had claimed it with every brushstroke and every memory. But the real reason I stayed, I wanted to know how far they'd go, what lines they were willing to cross, and if they'd ever think I'd be brave enough to cross mine. People say if you go looking for something, you'd better be ready to find it. But I wasn't looking. Not really, not that night. It was a Saturday, one of those humid evenings where the walls sweat and the floors creak louder than usual. I'd gone to the grocery store around 6 mostly to breathe air that wasn't steeped in betrayal and stolen glances. I took my time. Bought things we didn't need, expensive cheeses, imported olives, a bottle of Merlot I used to save for special nights. And then I came home quietly. I didn't slam the car door. I didn't rattle my keys. I walked up the front steps like I was sneaking into someone else's life. The porch light was off. The curtains were drawn. And the front door was unlocked. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't shocked anymore. I crept down the hallway past the foyer I decorated, past the mirror that used to reflect us. Their laughter reached me before I reached them. It was soft, almost sweet, except it was coming from our bedroom. That's when I knew they weren't hiding anymore. And something in me snapped, not like a scream or a crash, but like a quiet click, like a lock sliding into place. I didn't barge in. I didn't throw open the door. I simply opened it slowly, gently, like I'd been invited. And there they were. She was on top, wearing my nightgown. He looked up, eyes wide. She didn't move. She didn't even look embarrassed. She just smiled. "Do you want to join us?" she said. That moment didn't burn like I thought it would. It froze me Froze time. Froze everything I thought I knew about love, marriage, shame. I said nothing. I just turned around, walked downstairs, and poured myself a glass of wine. They didn't follow. Not that night. But something about that question kept echoing in my head. Not what they were doing, but how easily she said it. Like I was the outsider. Like she was the wife. The next morning she made breakfast. Blueberry pancakes, his favorite. She handed me a plate like nothing had happened. And Grant, he kissed my cheek before leaving for work. "I'll call you later," he said. Like we hadn't all stood on the edge of something unspeakable just hours before. I watched them from the kitchen window as she waved him off in my robe. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't an affair. This was an arrangement. And I had been voted out without ever being asked. She first spoke to me through the fence while hanging laundry. Marianne lived next door. Mid-50s, always wore wide-brimmed hats, always smelled faintly of lilacs and cigarette smoke. She'd lived on Sycamore Lane longer than anyone, a widow I'd heard. Her husband had died of a heart attack years ago. Since then, it was just her and her garden and her sharp, observant eyes. Morning, she said that Monday, slipping a clothespin onto a floral sheet. "You look like you haven't slept." I didn't answer at first. I just stared at the way the sheet puffed in the breeze. Free, unbothered, unlike me. "Your house has been loud lately," she added, her voice mild but pointed. "Thin walls. Don't worry, I'm not judging." I turned to her slowly. I hadn't told anyone, not my sister, not my co-workers. I was too ashamed. But Marianne, she didn't ask questions. She just knew. "She's not his cousin," I said flatly. She gave a short laugh like she'd been waiting for me to say it. "No, honey, I figured that out before you did." I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't fall. I just gripped the top of the fence like it might hold me up. Like someone finally seeing the truth made it real, more real than it already was. "I don't know what to do," I confessed. Marianne looked me straight in the eye and said, "Whatever you do, don't move out." "What?" "Don't give up your spot. That house may not have your name on it, but you built it. Every woman on this block saw you planting those damn hydrangeas." I stared at her. "You think I should just stay with them?" "I think," she said, folding a towel with a slow, deliberate snap, "you should pay attention. Listen, watch, let people dig their own graves." Her words settled over me like a second skin. It was the first time someone didn't treat me like a victim. She didn't offer pity. She offered strategy. That night, I watched Savannah open the front door for a delivery man. Pizza, 2 boxes. She smiled too widely, wore a tank top that left nothing to the imagination. He stayed longer than he should have, and I wondered, was she always like this? Was I the only one surprised? A week passed, then another. Grant became more distant, half home, half checked out. He'd leave early, come back late, barely acknowledged me except for small talk that felt rehearsed. I stopped pretending to care. Stopped asking where he'd been. Savannah started redecorating, little things. A new throw pillow, a lamp I never picked. She moved my shoes in the hallway closet, tossed my books in a box labeled storage. She was rearranging the house as if I were already gone. But I wasn't, and I wouldn't be. Not until I figured out what she really wanted. Not until I turned this house of betrayal into a trap they never saw coming. 'Cause maybe Marianne was right. Sometimes the best revenge is staying still while everyone else spins. I never planned to spy on her. But when someone steals your place in your own home, you start looking for the cracks. Savannah had a routine. Mornings were for performative domesticity, eggs, yoga, fake smiles. Afternoons were quieter. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her laptop sipping chamomile tea like some reformed debutante, her fingers tapping the keys just a little too confidently for someone who claimed to be figuring out her next move. So I started watching, not openly, never directly, just quietly. Through the crack in the living room curtain. From the hallway, the pantry door, the upstairs landing where the boards didn't creak if I walked barefoot. And I learned something. Savannah wasn't lost. She was calculating. I started noticing names she typed, always the same 3 initials, and her subject lines MRD. I wrote them down. I didn't know what they meant. Yet. One afternoon, she left the laptop open when she went upstairs. I told myself I'd only look for a second. But the second turned into 10 minutes, then 20. She wasn't emailing cousins. She wasn't applying for schools. She was writing to someone named Mitchell. The messages were long, flirtatious, and then downright explicit. "I miss your hands. He doesn't suspect a thing. She's here, but not really. It's like living with wallpaper." That one nearly broke me. Wallpaper? I was a stranger in my own home. Furniture she'd chosen to ignore. A woman erased by a younger version of herself, louder, slicker, shameless. But Mitchell wasn't the only secret. There were attachments. One of them was a scan of my signature. My blood went cold. I opened the file. It was a deed transfer form, drafted but not submitted. She was practicing. She was rehearsing a fraud, and she was close. She must have recorded me signing something else, maybe a birthday card, maybe one of Grant's endless loan papers. She had taken my signature and planned to make it say what she wanted. I heard footsteps upstairs and closed the laptop in a blur. My hands were shaking, but my mind had never been clearer. They weren't just cheating. They were stealing. And I'd been letting them like a fool, like a ghost, like wallpaper. But not anymore. I called Marianne that night. I need a favor, I said. She didn't ask what kind. She just said, you want a copy of everything she's doing on that laptop? Yes. I know a guy. That was all it took. That was the first step toward reclaiming the house that bore no trace of my name, but was built from the bones of my trust, my sweat, my sacrifice. Let them think I was fading. Let them think they were winning, because I was about to become unforgettable. The bulb in the upstairs hallway flickered for 2 weeks before it died completely. It was Savannah's job to replace it. She'd made a whole point about taking over household duties since I was, in her words, emotionally unavailable. But the truth is, she never replaced anything. She only took. The night it finally went dark, something shifted in the air. Like the house itself had grown tired of pretending everything was fine. And maybe so had I. Grant came home late. Again. His tie was askew, his shirt half untucked. He kissed Savannah's head and didn't look at me at all. Long day, I asked. He blinked, confused, like he'd forgotten I still lived here. Yeah, he muttered. Exhausting. I poured him a drink even though he didn't ask. He drank it. Still didn't say thank you. Didn't say anything. Just disappeared upstairs with her. I stood in the dark hallway for a long time staring at that dead light bulb. And I thought, that's me. I used to glow here. And now I'm flickering out. But not for long. The next morning, Marianne's guy came by, said he was a handyman, said he needed to check the fuse box. Savannah was in the shower. Grant had already left. I let the man in, handed him a flash drive, and led him to the kitchen table, the scene of Savannah's daily digital performances. He worked fast, cloned her files, transferred everything onto a hidden backup drive I'd later tuck into the lining of an old purse I never used anymore. Within 20 minutes, he was gone, and I had a mirror of her digital secrets. That afternoon, I read everything, every email, every draft, every invoice. She wasn't just plotting to forge my signature on the deed transfer. She had already set up a new LLC, Savannah & Co. She listed the house address as its business headquarters. She planned to flip the house. Flip my house. She and Grant were going to sell it, downsize, and take the cash to start over in Florida. It was all in the emails with Mitchell, who it turned out was a realtor, not a lover. Worse, a partner. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband, she was using him, and he was too dumb or too desperate to see it. That night, as I laid in bed alone, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to the dark, "You picked the wrong woman to erase." Because I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to burn it all down first. But not with fire. With truth. It was my idea. A dinner, just the three of us. I wanted to see how far Savannah would go when she thought she'd already won. I wanted to look her in the eyes, pass her the butter, and let her think she was safe. 'Cause that's when people make mistakes. I thought maybe we could have a meal together. I told her that morning, stirring cream into my coffee, like civilized people. She blinked at me, surprised, but only for a moment. Then she smiled, that syrupy, triumphant smile, the one she wore when she believed she was smarter than everyone in the room. Of course, she said, I think that would be nice. I made pot roast. The good kind with red wine and rosemary, real mashed potatoes, salad with cranberries and goat cheese. The kind of meal you cook when you want to remind a man what he used to come home for. Grant was shocked when he walked in that night. The house smelled like forgiveness. Or maybe a trap. Dinner, he asked, cautiously loosening his tie. I didn't answer, just kissed his cheek long enough for Savannah to see and said, "Wash your hands." The three of us sat at the table like some fractured version of a Norman Rockwell painting. I poured wine, passed plates, smiled like I didn't know about the fake LLC, the emails to Mitchell, or the forged signature sitting in a folder on her desktop. I made them talk about the weather, about politics, about the future. That's when Savannah made her move. She leaned forward, brushing imaginary lint from Grant's shoulder, and said, "I know it's early, but maybe by next spring, we could think about listing the house." She glanced at me when she said it, just a flicker of eye contact, like a poker player flipping over a winning hand too early. Grant looked at me, then back at her. Liz still lives here, he mumbled, avoiding both our eyes. I smiled, took a sip of wine. Oh, don't worry, I said sweetly. I'm sure Savannah has a plan for that, don't you? She went stiff. I just meant, if we were starting fresh, new beginnings. And what happens to the old endings, I asked, tilting my head. Do they just disappear? She didn't answer. I stood and began clearing the plates, moving slowly, deliberately, letting the silence grow thick. Then casually I turned to her and said, Oh, and Savannah, I know about Mitchell, the LLC, the draft of the deed transfer with my name forged at the bottom. The air died. Grant dropped his fork. Savannah didn't move. I leaned closer. Next time you want to play wife, maybe don't do it on a computer you don't own. She stood so fast her chair screeched. This is crazy, she hissed. You've been spying on me. I live here, I said calmly. I see everything. Grant looked between us slack-jawed, realizing far too late that he was no longer the man in charge of anything. I'm going to call my lawyer, Savannah snapped. Please do, I replied, wiping my hands on a napkin. Make sure he knows you attempted real estate fraud while living rent-free in someone else's home. I walked out of the room before she could respond. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice, 'cause I didn't need to. For the first time in months, I was the one with power, and I had no intention of giving it back. He knocked on my door that night like a stranger. Not our bedroom door. My door. The one I'd moved into 2 weeks ago, the spare room at the end of the hallway, the one I once used for sewing, thinking someday I might make a quilt for our child. The child that never came. I was brushing my hair when I heard it. Liz. His voice was smaller than I remembered. Can we talk? I opened the door and stood there in my robe, no makeup, no emotion. He looked tired, deflated. Not the charming man who used to hold my hand at open houses or whisper sweet nothings at midnight. Just a man who'd built his world on someone else's foundation and was watching it collapse. She's packing, he said. Good. I didn't know about the LLC, the forged signature, any of it. I crossed my arms. But you knew she wasn't your cousin. That part wasn't hard to figure out. He sighed, rubbed his face with both hands. I messed up. Messed up, I laughed cold and dry. You didn't forget to take the trash out, Grant. You moved your mistress into our house. You let her parade around in my clothes, my kitchen, my bed. And now you want what absolution? He looked at me then, really looked. I don't know what I want, he admitted. But I know I don't want to lose you. Too late, I thought. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I asked why her. He didn't answer. Because there is no answer to that question that doesn't scar. We stood in silence, two people who once promised forever now, separated by a hallway and 1,000 broken moments. Then he said it. What do you want, Liz? It wasn't angry. It wasn't defiant. It was genuine, and maybe for the first time in years, honest. And I looked him in the eyes and told the truth. I want my name on the deed. He blinked. I want half of this house officially mine. I want papers drawn up by a lawyer I choose. I want Savannah out today. I want a written apology for the deception, the infidelity, and the insult of making me invisible in my own home. And after all that, maybe I'll let you keep sleeping under this roof while I decide if you're worth forgiving. He opened his mouth. I'm not done, I snapped. I want the truth about everything. When it started. How many times? If there were others. I don't care if it hurts. I've been hurting every day you thought I didn't notice. Now it's your turn. He nodded slowly. Okay. And I want flowers, I added. Real ones. The kind you used to bring me for no reason. He almost smiled at that, but I didn't. Not because I miss you, I said. Because I miss who I was before you made me beg to exist. Then I closed the door in his face. And on the other side, I finally heard him cry. By Thursday, Savannah was gone. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't slam doors. She left like smoke quiet curling around the edges of my life before disappearing altogether. A neighbor told me she saw Savannah get into a silver BMW with Florida plates. The man driving mid-40s, sunglasses, realtor hair. Mitchell. Good. Let her be his problem now. Grant, true to his word, for once called a lawyer. We had papers drawn up by the end of the week. I sat across from him in the attorney's office, my hair pulled back, my lips painted with the shade Savannah once claimed he liked. He didn't look at me, not once. And I didn't need him to. Because when I signed those documents, adding my name legally to the deed of the house I'd built with my sweat and blind devotion, it felt like the first page of a brand new book. The lawyer slid the final copy across the table and said, "Congratulations." And I smiled, not at Grant, at myself. Back at the house, the doorbell rang just after noon. I opened it to find a delivery man holding the largest bouquet I'd ever seen. Sunflowers, peonies, roses, and my favorite purple lisianthus. No vase, just paper string and reckless beauty. For Liz Porter he read, from Grant. I took the flowers, thanked him, then walked to the trash can and dropped them in without a second glance. Later I found Grant standing in the garden trying to clip the overgrown rose bushes. He was sweating, muttering to himself, hopeless with the shears. I watched from the porch. Too little, too late, I said. He looked up. Maybe he said, but I'm trying. Then try somewhere else, I said. And I meant it. Because it wasn't anger I felt anymore. It wasn't even grief. It was clarity. He had wanted a partner who made him feel admired. Savannah had wanted a house that could be flipped. Neither of them had wanted me, but now I wanted everything. My house, my future, my voice. And I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. That night I slept in the master bedroom again, alone. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Savannah's perfume lingered in the guest room for days. Vanilla and some synthetic floral note I could never place. Too young, too sweet. It clung to the curtains, the pillowcases, the air itself like defiance, like a challenge. I opened the windows and let the wind carry it out inch by inch. I stripped the bed, bagged the sheets, and threw out every candle she'd touched. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about cleansing. This room, this house had absorbed her, and I was done sharing my walls with ghosts that refused to stay gone. Under the bed, I found a small leather journal, black, plain zipped shut. She'd left it behind. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to read it, but the other part, the version of me she'd tried to erase, deserved to. It wasn't a diary, it was a record. Dates, amounts, descriptions. G called Mitch, 7:42 p.m. Confirmed timeline. Moved lipstick to master bath. She didn't notice. House, Dijkstra, emotional leverage. Use as needed. And then, if he won't leave her, destroy her. My hand shook, not from fear but from recognition. Savannah hadn't just fallen in love with my husband. She'd planned my extinction. She came into my home with strategy, not sentiment. She weaponized charm, calculated presence, wore innocence like armor. But she'd underestimated one thing. Me. I put the journal in the same purse where I kept the flash drive, my evidence, my insurance policy, my monument to the woman I used to be before betrayal, sharpened me into someone smarter. Later that day, I started repainting the room, soft olive green, earthy, real. Halfway through, I heard footsteps behind me. You're really doing it, Grant said. I didn't turn around. I always was, I replied. He was quiet for a beat. Do you want me to move out? He asked softly. I turned then, slowly, looked him in the eye. I want you to move on. And I meant it. Because this house wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't broken anymore. I'd finally scrubbed the walls clean, not of Savannah, not of Grant, but of the version of myself, who believed love meant sacrifice without limits. This room, it wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. And I was finally ready to decide what kind of life I wanted to live inside it. 3 weeks later, I saw the sign in a neighbor's yard. Open house Sunday, 2 to 5. Same font, same realtor color scheme, same hopeful balloons. I stood across the street and stared at it longer than I should have. It wasn't my house, obviously, but it brought back a flood of memories the day Grant and I first walked into this one, all optimism and illusion. The way he held my hand, the way I believed that picking paint colors and throw pillows meant permanence. And then something strange happened. I felt nothing. No ache, no grief, just a quiet knowing. That house across the street, it was for someone else's dream, someone else's fairy tale. Mine had burned, but in the ashes I'd found something better. Myself. I spent that weekend reclaiming the corners of my life. I rearranged the living room, hung art that I picked, changed the locks, called the utility companies, and updated every account my name only. Grant moved out officially the next day. No drama, no speech, just a suitcase and a tired nod. I left the deed papers on the table, he said. They're all finalized. It's yours now. Officially. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt peaceful. He stood there for a second, looking like he wanted to say more, but I beat him to it. You can go. He went. And I stood in the hallway of my home alone, free and full of the kind of silence that didn't judge. I didn't cry. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the open house balloons ripple in the wind. Someone somewhere was walking into a kitchen right now saying, "Oh, I love the backsplash," believing that backsplash meant forever. Let them. We all deserve our illusions, at least for a little while. But me, I'd outgrown mine. Because this house, it's not a symbol anymore, not a trophy, not a trap. It's where I learned to stop asking for space. It's where I stopped letting someone else name me. It's mine. All of it. Every beam, every floorboard, every haunted corner that tried to erase me. Now it tells a different story. Mine. It happened by accident. I was carrying in groceries, 3 bags on each arm keys, dangling from my teeth when I dropped a bottle of olive oil on the porch. It rolled right off the step and cracked open at the edge of the walkway. I sighed, closed my eyes, tried not to scream at the universe. That's when she appeared. Need a hand. She looked to be about 30, long black braids, soft eyes, worn jeans. A stranger. She'd just moved in down the block, rented the blue house with the slanted shutters. Said her name was Nora, recently divorced, starting over. Something about her felt familiar. Not her face, but her energy. Like she'd seen things too. Like she'd sat on cold bathroom tiles asking herself how she got there. I almost said no. For so long I'd protected my silence like a shield. But something in me softened. Sure, I said. Come in. She followed me inside, careful with the bags quiet with her movements. We chatted about the neighborhood, the weather, the dog 2 doors down that barks at 2 a.m. And then she paused. I love this house, she said. Feels honest. I blinked. Honest? That word hit me in a way I didn't expect. She didn't know its history. The betrayals, the shame, the blood on the floorboards no one else could see. But maybe she felt it. The truth that lived here now. I used to hate it, I admitted, but I fought for it. Now it's mine. She smiled. Sometimes that's what makes something beautiful. Before she left, she touched the wall by the front door and said, "Whatever happened here, it made this place strong." I didn't ask how she knew. I just nodded. And when she left, I stood alone in my hallway and touched that same spot on the wall. Once Savannah's voice had echoed off it. Once Grant's footsteps had thundered through it. Once I had whispered apologies to no one, wondering if I'd lost everything. But not anymore. Now it held me. The version of me who said yes when she wanted no, when she needed, and never again mistook being quiet for being loved. That wall, it wasn't just drywall and paint. It was proof that I stayed, that I rebuilt, that I became someone no one could erase. The funny thing is, I used to dream of being someone's wife. Not just married, but kept. Loved in that full-body storybook way. I thought marriage was the prize, the paper, the proof, and the house, the castle. But all that did was teach me how easily people decorate over your silence. I didn't put my name on the house, not at first. And maybe that's why it took me so long to realize how much of myself I'd handed over quietly, sweetly, with a smile. Because it wasn't just the deed that was missing my name. It was the dinners where no one asked about my day. The arguments where my voice didn't count. The weeks where I became the ghost that cleaned the floors and never closed her own door. But not anymore. Now, my name is on the deed, yes, but that's not what matters most. What matters is that it's on the mortgage, the utilities, the mail, the decision to repaint the hallway, the new chair in the corner, the locks. My name is on the choices, and even more importantly, it's on me. The woman who stayed not to be pitied, but to observe, to study, to understand exactly how people operate when they think you're weak. Savannah taught me that some women come with teeth and plans, not hearts. Grant taught me that love without respect is just proximity. Marianne reminded me that wisdom lives next door, quiet but watchful. And I taught myself that no one can steal your place in a home you choose to claim. Now every room in this house has been scrubbed of silence. I host book clubs in the living room. I cook for myself in the kitchen I once served him in. I laugh loudly in the bedroom he once desecrated. And when I walk past mirrors, I don't look away anymore. Because the reflection finally belongs to a woman I recognize. The woman who put her name on nothing and took back everything.